that's wow.
Yeah, one and two will have paranoia. One and two will have some sort of psychotic delusional thinking. And the sad part is probably around 20 to 25% of them, if not higher, will have a long-term sequelae of that. They won't get a diagnosis of schizophrenia. They'll have insight around it. But they'll always feel like someone's following them, someone's right behind them, the cops are watching them. I don't know how many patients I've talked to who went straight to the police station and said, just arrest me. And the cops are like, I have no idea who you are. No, you've been tapping my phones. I know you've been watching me. And they're like, we don't, but come on in, and they end up in hospital, of course. But it's just the reality of some of the substances. And then there's a lot of belief of like, if we give them pharmaceutical grade, it'll be better. There's absolutely no data that somebody who's gone psychotic from meth will not go psychotic from a prescribed stimulant like Vyvanse, or they become psychotic the same way. Once your brain goes down that path, it'll keep going down that path.
Yeah. Okay. So if somebody starts with a prescribed stimulant, though, is the same thing? Like they're still going to go down that, like?
No, the risk of psychosis from a prescribed stimulant is much, much, much lower. Okay. It's
once
quite
you're there,
rare.
once you have a set point, you're right?
Yeah. Once you go psychotic, stimulants are out. Stimulants and pot are a no-no. And you talk to a lot of people who use meth and they don't use pot anymore, and you almost guaranteed know that person goes psychotic.
Well, I can tell you, meth was the end of almost every drug except fentanyl, right? Like it took a lot of crack off the scene. It took a lot of, all of it. And,
sure it did.
Right. I can tell you from my personal experience myself, I hadn't had a drink since, right around the time I tried meth the first time. Right? It's the last time I had a drink, right? So,
I feel like the things I see most commonly in the hospital that are causing psychosis is meth and cannabis. Which is funny because I feel like people are like, cannabis is legal, cannabis is benign, cannabis is not a big deal. No. The problem is the THC content of the cannabis that people are using is like shockingly high. And, I see way more cannabis-induced psychosis since cannabis was legalized than what I ever saw before.
Is there an aggravating factor to that, though? Like, is it somebody who's already gone psychotic or kind of hit that threshold? Are those the people that you're seeing as a result of cannabis? A lot of people have a hard time believing what you just said.
Yeah, so I think
context, right?
Like what Rob was saying, right? I think that meth, if you take a group of people using meth, there's a higher proportion of them that are going to develop psychosis than if you take a group of people who are using cannabis. And we also know that if you develop psychosis on cannabis, you're more sensitive to psychosis. You're a higher risk individual to develop schizophrenia than if you become psychotic on meth. Because it's kind of like almost everyone who uses meth will become psychotic at some point, right? But I wanted to say that because, thinking about who the listeners are to this show. And again, people have this idea that cannabis is benign. And again, if you're 50 years old and you've been smoking weed on and off your whole life and you've never had psychosis, you're probably safe. But if you're 50 years old and you've got a kid, or you're 40 and you've got a kid and your kid is using it and telling you it's fine, it's legal, it's benign, don't worry about it, not true.
Right.
It's so